It weighs 75 kilograms.
It requires 2 people just to lift it. It is composed of the skins of 160 donkeys, and according to legend, every single word on its 620 pages was written in a single night.
But the most terrifying part isn't the size. It's the author. History calls it the Codex Gigas.
But you know it by a darker name, the Devil's Bible. Did a doomed monk really sell his soul to Lucifer to escape execution? Or does modern science reveal a truth that is even more obsessed and disturbing than the myth? Today, we are opening the book on one of history's greatest unsolved mysteries. We are separating the forbidden knowledge from the facts. This is the Codex Gigas, legend versus reality. If you're new here, we explore dark history and the artifacts that challenge our understanding of the past. The Codex Gigas is the largest extant medieval manuscript in the world, created in the early 13th century in Bohemia, modern-day Czech Republic. It is a physical anomaly. It's 3 feet tall and almost 2 feet wide, but its fame doesn't come from its dimensions. It comes from page 290. The only full-page portrait of the devil to exist in a medieval religious text. For centuries, this book has been surrounded by whispers of curses, disaster, and a pact with the underworld. Our channel data shows that you are fascinated by stories of devils, pacts, and for good reason. They represent the ultimate gamble. Was this the work of a madman, a genius, or something else? Let's start where all great dark histories begin, the legend. The year is 1229. The setting is the Benedictine monastery of Podlace. A monk, known to history as Herman the Recluse, has committed a sin so heinous, so unforgivable, that the monastery decides on a punishment worse than death. He is to be walled up alive. Imagine the terror as the stones rose higher, sealing his fate. Herman panicked. In a desperate bid for mercy, he made the abbot an impossible promise. He claimed that if they spared him, he would write a book that contained all earthly knowledge, and he would do it in a single night. The abbot, likely mocking the impossible request, agreed. Herman began to write, but as midnight approached, the sheer magnitude of the task crushed him. His hand cramped, the ink ran dry. The dawn was coming, and with it, his execution. So Herman didn't pray to God. He prayed to the only entity who answers when the lights go out. He summoned Lucifer. The legend says the Prince of Darkness appeared in the cell and offered a trade. The completed book in exchange for Herman's immortal soul. Herman signed the deal. The devil took the pen, and with supernatural speed, finished the massive tome before sunrise. As a signature of his work, the devil added his own portrait on page 290. When the abbot entered the cell the next morning, the book was finished. Herman was saved from the wall, but his soul was lost forever. It's a perfect story. It combines the forbidden knowledge trope with the classic Faustian bargain. But here is where we have to ask, is there any physical evidence to support this impossible timeline? For centuries, the single night theory was just folklore. But recently, paleographers, experts in historical handwriting, and scientists from the National Library of Sweden took the codex apart, virtually speaking, to test this theory. Here is what they found, and honestly, it's arguably more impressive than the magic trick. The entire manuscript, all 310 parchment leaves, is written in Carolingian minuscule. When experts analyzed the slant of the letters, the pressure of the pen, and the formation of the characters, they found something shocking. The handwriting is consistent, identical, from the first page to the last. Usually, in a book of this size, you see the writer's hand age. You see fatigue, you see changes in style over years, or you see multiple scribes taking turns. Not here. The scientific consensus is that the Codex Gigas was indeed written by one single person. However, the single night theory. Impossible. By recreating the calligraphy, experts calculated that if a person wrote for 6 hours a day, 6 days a week, without stopping for a single error, it would take at least 20 to 30 years to complete. This changes the profile of our monk entirely. He wasn't a man rushing to save his life in one night. He was a man dedicating an entire lifetime to a singular, obsessive goal. Think about that level of dedication. Or perhaps penance. Why would one man spend 30 years locking himself away to write this? Let's look at what he actually wrote. The Codex isn't just a Bible. It's a medieval Wikipedia. It contains the Vulgate Bible, yes, but it also holds Josephus's Antiquities of the Jews, Isidore of Seville's etymologies, medical treatises, and history books. But sandwiched between the holy texts are things that shouldn't be there. There are cures for epilepsy. There are strange medical concoctions. And most controversially, conjurations and spells. This brings us back to the star of the show, page 290, the devil. Why is he there? If this is a holy book, why give Satan a full-page spread? If you look closely, the devil is depicted alone in an empty landscape. He has green skin, 4 fingers and toes, and is wearing an ermine loincloth, a symbol of royalty. He is the Prince of Darkness indeed. But the context is key, and this is what most viral posts about the Devil's Bible miss to understand the devil. You have to look at the page right before him. Page 289 depicts the heavenly city, the New Jerusalem. The layout is intentional. If you close the book, the kingdom of heaven and the Prince of Darkness face each other. It isn't a tribute to Satan. It's a warning. It is a dualistic representation of good versus evil. The monk wasn't glorifying the devil. He was showing the stark contrast between the salvation of the holy city and the loneliness of hell. However, there is a strange detail. The pages specifically around the devil illustration are darker. They are scorched and shadowed, unlike the rest of the book. Skeptics say this is simply because UV light has damaged those pages, because people have been flipping to the devil for 800 years. However, believers say it's the residue of the dark energy contained within the ink. While the full-page portrait of the devil captures the world's attention, the true horror of the Codex Gigas might not be what is visible, but what has been violently removed. Deep within the manuscript, hidden between the holy texts and the historical chronicles, lies a physical void that modern science has failed to fill. When archivists examine the binding of this massive tome, they find definitive proof of mutilation. 10 to 12 sheets of vellum, representing 24 pages of text, are completely missing. These weren't pages that fell out due to the ravages of time or the wear of centuries. The remnants of the parchment stubs left in the binding reveal a deliberate act. Someone took a knife to the Devil's Bible and excised these pages with surgical precision. The location of this excision provides the only clue to its contents. The gap appears in a section containing penitentials, manuals used by priests to assign penance for sins. This specific placement, nestled among the rules of conduct and confession, has birthed wild and unsettling theories about what was written there. The most academic explanation is that the pages contained the rule of Saint Benedict, the strict guidelines for monastic life. If the monastery at Podlace changed its observance or if the specific rules became outdated, they might have been removed to prevent error. Yet, this feels like a mundane reason to deface such a majestic masterpiece, leaving behind visible scars in the binding. This leads us to the darker possibilities. Did these pages contain the actual devil's prayer from the legend? If the monk truly made a pact, perhaps the specific ritual used to summon the Prince of Darkness was recorded here. A later custodian, terrified by the presence of such dangerous knowledge, might have cut it out to neutralize the book's evil potential. Or perhaps the motive was political scandal. These pages may have held a record of specific sins or a list of disgraced individuals associated with the monastery in the turbulent political landscape of medieval Bohemia. Possessing a list of enemies or evidence of monastic corruption could have been a death sentence for the entire order. Removing the names might have been a desperate act of survival. We can't discuss the Codex Gigas without mentioning its dark history of ownership. The book seems to bring ruin to whoever holds it, the monastery that created it. Destroyed during the Hussite Wars, the monastery that bought it later went bankrupt. Rudolph II, the Holy Roman Emperor who became obsessed with it. He went mad and lost his throne. Finally, in 1648, the Swedish army looted Prague. They didn't take the gold. They took the books. They stole the Codex Gigas and brought it to Stockholm. Shortly after, a massive fire broke out in the Swedish royal castle. The Codex was only saved because someone allegedly threw the 75-kilogram book out of a window. Legend says it landed on a person, injuring them, but the book survived. It seems the Codex Gigas is a survivor, even if its owners are not. So, was the Codex Gigas written by a monk who sold his soul? Scientifically, no. It was written by a human being, Herman the Recluse, over decades of painstaking, possibly penitent, labor. But in a way, the reality is more haunting than the legend. Imagine the mind of a man who spends 30 years alone, scratching ink into animal skin, staring into the face of the devil, just to leave something behind that would outlast him. Well, he succeeded. It's now 800 years later, we're still talking about him. If you enjoyed this deep dive into forbidden knowledge, hit that like button. It helps us feed the algorithm, which is a beast of its own. We have a lot more content coming on ancient grimoires and pacts with the devil, so make sure you are subscribed with notifications on. You don't want to miss what we uncover next. Thanks for watching.
This was my first attempt at using my own voice in a video deep dive. I'm sure I'll get better with each attempt. Good night, and remember, be careful what you read.